Hello again. The thumbnail to this video shows a class at Geary's Primary School in Gants Hill, which is now in the London borough of Redbridge, but was at that time in Essex. Two things stand out in the photograph. One is, of course, that like almost every other part of Britain at that time, 1955, every single person in the picture is white. There were simply no black people or Asians in Gants Hill at that time. The second thing we observe is that there are 46 children and a single young woman in charge of them. There were no teaching assistants in those days, just one teacher and 45 or 50 children to teach. How was this possible? It was possible, of course, because children simply did as they were told in those days. If the teacher told them to sit down and be quiet, that's what they did. If she said stand up, they stood up. The parents, of course, backed the teacher's authority, and the result was that the children learned. They learned not about 476 different genders or the desirability of being nice to drag queens, nor did they learn about black history or emotional literacy. Instead, they learned to read and write, do sums, and also they learned about geography, the history of Britain, and so on. Each day began with prayers and singing hymns, and patriotism was taken for granted. I'm describing how things were, you understand, not expressing any opinion about whether the situation at that time was better or worse than it is now in schools. It was, however, certainly different. I mention the ethnicity of these children because many people today deny that Britain was, until the 1950s, an ethnically homogenous society. Indeed, in many parts of this country, the situation like that lingered on until the present century. The reason that some people refuse to admit that this was so is, of course, political. It's part of a myth system which involved Africans living here during the Roman occupation and so on. One thing which is notable about the school class in that photograph is that none of them suffered from gender identity problems, and neither did any of them have disabilities. Viewers may be aware, perhaps, that today, by way of contrast, a fifth of school pupils have disabilities and special educational needs. Nor was there any illiteracy. All those children were able to read and write fluently when they began secondary school. Amazing, isn't it, with a staff to pupil ratio of 46 to 1? The truth is that children were much better behaved at that time. They did as they were told and learned what they were told, with the natural consequence that they were better educated and less inclined in later life to be violent or commit crimes or generally be disorderly. Society was more peaceful and orderly, a state of affairs which resulted naturally from the peaceful and orderly childhood which most people experienced. By the way, every one of those children in that photograph lived with their mother and father, which is fairly unusual these days, I'm afraid. Of course, there were criminals in the 1950s, but they were few and far between. Most people behaved themselves at school, and then they went on to behave themselves in the streets and their general life as they grew older. That is one of the reasons that life was so much more pleasant for the average citizen in those days. I am reminded of that passage in Scripture which tells us, "Raise up a child in the way he should go, he will not depart from it, even in old age." Proverbs 22:6. It's, I realise I sound a bit of like something like a religious maniac with quoting chapter and verse in that way. It's a passage which is close to my heart, though. I believe that if you teach a child the right way, then the odds are that he will live the right way as an adult. That is what happened in the 1950s, and it's what is not happening now. and we can see the results all around us.